27th, 2024 at 6 p.m. for this council party to deliver our invocation.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the privilege of being able to gather together our constituents, our friends, and our citizens. We ask that you come and be with us and help us to make the right decisions in this meeting. Help us to have clear minds and calm resolve. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready to call the roll first?
Councilwoman Doss.
Here.
Councilman Harvey.
Here.
Councilwoman Holman. Here. Mayor Sykes.
Here.
And Councilman Patton.
Here.
Besides, that's fine.
Our first item of business tonight is a resolution number 0124. That's a resolution to establish a policy of background checks for volunteer coaches in our youth sports program. Remember the issue came up at it was our last meeting, and we found out that background checks were not being done. So this resolution, this policy will allow background checks to be done on all volunteer coaches and assistant coaches in our recreation program. Is there a motion as to the resolution?
Can I ask a question first? Ms. Moss, did you have a chance to look at this? No, you looked at the.
I did, and I had a couple of proposed, edits to it, but they weren't major edits, but, I'm happy to propose the council to tell you what it was.
Okay, please do.
I thought on the policy statement, it begins with the letterhead of policy regulation, policy statement on the second page, it pertains to the background checks that we perform. And it refers to the National Criminal Database and the National Sex Offender Registry. I'm also aware in South Carolina that there is another database that we may or may not have access to, but there's DSS maintains an internal registry that's called the Central Registry of Child Abuse and Neglect. And the DSS has an investigation, and they find the investigation found that they may place someone on that internal registry that is not a public registry, but they place them there so that if they ever apply to work with a substitute teacher or chaperone field trips or work with children, they'll be found. Well, looking at that statutory section, we may or may not have access to that database. The way it works is certain people are granted permission to access the database online. When you look at the laundry list of those that are allowed, law enforcement investigating crime is allowed, and report staff and DSS. And so there's a catch-all that says any person engaged in bona fide research with the written permission of the state director. So we might get access to that database. And it might include people that weren't actually charged with a crime, but they've been investigated for child abuse and neglect.
Right.
So it makes sense to me to add that registry to this list. And if we can we'll check it and let us have access to it, and we won't check it. But anybody that's applying will know we're going to look at that database. And then on the following page, in the crimes against children, we list the enumerated abandonment, abuse, and enticements and so forth. It doesn't list that. With child neglect is also a crime in South Carolina, so I might add the word. Other than that, I was pleased with it. And I did a little research and I found out that 11 states and the nation require this kind of thing for non-school related sports programs. South Carolina's not one.
Really? Sort of surprised at that.
So that was my only comment.
Mayor, based on those comments, which I think are relevant and appropriate, I make a motion we approve the resolution as presented with the two amendments recommended by Mr. Holmes.
Resolution only requires one reading. If we don't have those in writing at the time we pass it, is that going to be an issue?
Not me, I wouldn't think so.
Motion's made.
Miss Brandy can take those down directly and add them to it, and we're meeting Monday night for the regular meeting, we can sign it then rather than sign it now and have it. Or should we just defer it until Monday night when those amendments have been added? Miss Brandy seems to think that's not a good idea, much expression on her face.
No, I don't think we want to defer it to next Monday.
Okay.
All right, you've heard Mr. Paget's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Ms. Goss?
Yes.
Mr. Harden?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Paget?
Yes.
No vote yes.
I might, make another comment. I would recommend for implementation of the policy, maybe a couple of forms be standardized and prepared. One being an application for a construction coach to sign, where they first give permission for the background check.
Yeah.
And one being another form where the athletic director or the city attorney will they make a determination, they can sign off on the test, review the background check, and this decision is made. Because you're going to be destroying the actual records in the policy, but you don't have to destroy the certification of the inspection records too.
So the current coaching application includes an application of an agreement to a background check, and then also a code of conduct for coaches. So they do sign those three forms. But I told him what I thought we could do is have a form that is completed for each coach once the background check is complete, only signed off on by the recreation director if there's no further review needed. If there's further review needed, then it would need to be signed off by the city attorney as well. Just for.
All right, we'll move on to item B, next conceptual master plan presentation from Bolton.
Chris here, so y'all can introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lorna Allen. I am a urban designer, landscape architect with Bolton Inc. I've had the pleasure of working on your economic development and downtown plan for the past 6 months under the tutelage of Chris, who is the project manager for this project. So thank you all for having us here tonight. What we'll be sharing is the compilation of about a 6 or 7 month process where we've had a really great steering committee guiding us along the way, and direction from staff as well. So go ahead and get into it. But just to let you all know, this was about a 4-phase process. The first phase was information gathering. We spoke with staff. We did our own due diligence with gathering inventory, and also started to look at some of the historic trends within the market. Phase 2 included kind of a feedback session with staff and stakeholders and decision makers. We uncovered what we discovered. We started to understand what the key issues were. Some of the ideas and themes started to emerge. And there we developed some goals and objectives for the plan. Phase 3 was our draft recommendations. We developed summary of our findings and strategies for a short and long-term vision. Started to think about the implications of that and recommendations for an action plan so that the ideas and recommendations in this plan can be implemented in the near and coming future. So tonight, we're kind of at that point where we have a final draft plan, and looking to you all as decision makers tonight to receive this plan as your own and move forward with implementation. And we would highly recommend that every year that staff and you all look at this plan and see what you've been able to accomplish and keep building, because it is intended to be a living document. So without further ado, I'm going to keep us moving. Tonight, I am going to keep us spotlighted on the plan. So much of what you see will be actual pages from the plan. It's about a 95-page document, which outlines the whole process that we have gone through over the past 6 to 7 months, as well as the engagement that we've done with the steering committee and the general public. It identifies the guiding principles that were developed through community input. This is really the community's ideas that we were just able to put together into a plan, into a draft framework, which sets us up for identifying key recommendations. There are a few that we are identifying as catalyst recommendations that we feel that will kind of jumpstart and are very well connected to other projects and policies and opportunities in the plan. And then we have a process for implementing the plan. Because we feel that if we hand this document over to you and don't tell you, hey, here are the opportunities for how to get it done, we haven't done our job thoroughly. So the plan, we are calling it LORIS, the City Without Limits. LORIS, a City Without Limits is something that we uncovered through our due diligence, learning about the history of your community. And so it is laid out with the introduction, existing conditions, a chapter about economic development, all of the engagement that we did, as well as the framework and implementation. It was really wonderful for me. I've been one of those people who've driven by the exit for LORIS, probably 30 years, and never had actually been to LORIS. So it was a really great opportunity for me to get to learn your community, learn your history, learn about your culture and your special events and what people find so special about LORIS, the City Without Limits. For the purpose of this plan, though, we really focused in on your downtown, with the Iron Cross at your center, really understanding how we could come up with recommendations and some ideas that would support what's already great about your community, and then bring new ideas that would foster more economic development and more opportunities in your community. I mentioned that we did go into some extensive existing conditions analysis. We did quite a bit of mapping with data that we were able to retrieve from Horry County, and then also worked with a partner to look at some economic development opportunities in the community. I mentioned that this was very much a community-guided vision, and we engaged various stakeholders in different ways. I mentioned that we did have a steering committee. It was made up by community members who represented the business leadership community, residents, neighbors, downtown advocates were all included on this committee. We leaned on staff to help us identify those folks and who they were and able to participate in the plan. We met monthly with them throughout the process. Every step of the way, they saw the information that we had to share and provided us input and feedback. So they truly were a steering committee. We did a few pop-up events and partnerships with the city. Chris was actually at the Bog Off this year and worked with the Chamber of Commerce at the City of LORIS booth to hand out surveys that we partnered with the COG, who is also doing your comprehensive plan. So we did these efforts concurrently so that the public, they're not going to really know the difference between the two plans. They just know that we're planning for LORIS. So we really worked hard to make sure that those two opportunities were in sync with our timeline down to the survey that we put out into the public. And then lastly, we held a community workshop at the Public Works facility. Thank you. Thank you. And it was very well attended. Actually, it was about 5 till, and I was like, oh no, I hope people show up. And then everybody showed up. So it was very well attended. We had some really great conversation. The local press was there. Got some great information from folks as well. Got to speak to some of your institutional anchors here in town at the hospital. So that was a really great opportunity for us to kind of hear firsthand from the community what they desired, what was important to them, and how they saw the future of LORIS. So from those interactions, we developed these guiding principles. They might be a little cheeky, but they're memorable. So, and that's our goal here, is for LORIS to really showcase your culture through art, branding, marketing, events, and downtown programming. So we term this one, it's time to strut your stuff. You guys are really great. You need to crow about it, okay? It's awesome here in LORIS. The next is the opportunity to connect back to the Iron Cross. This is the heart of your community, right at the intersection of Main, Railroad, and Meeting. You have a lot going on here. Your businesses, your local businesses are here. So we need to think about investments that are going to connect people here. So we need to think about investments that are going to make it safe for people to cross the street. And when I say cross the street, I'm thinking about all ages and abilities. The mom with the stroller, the person with a walker, or someone in a wheelchair. Thinking through how those investments are going to be generational for the future. And so we need to lay that groundwork today. And think about how we can also position Morris so that if the opportunity presents itself, that we can make some very strategic investments, maybe land acquisition or updates to our zoning code, so that we can receive the good stuff that's coming. And lastly, growing the coop. And that's really about the need for housing with retail. Retail does great, but it can't do great on its own. Housing does really great, but it needs retail to survive. So when you put rooftops, housing units within walkable proximity to retail, they have a really great symbiotic relationship. So through this process, we work with the community to identify opportunities for areas that could grow with more residential housing, and look at different types of housing that you may not have today in your community. Maybe it's townhomes or other types of residential units that would allow people to be walkable to downtown. So as we were beginning the conversation with the community and our steering committee, we put together a strategies framework. And essentially, this is kind of like everyone's standing around a map and pointing, and we're trying to draw circles and figure out where the things need to go. And this is kind of the cleaned up version of that. And really, I'm going to hit the highlights. We looked at opportunities for infill development. We looked at opportunities for streetscape improvements. Maybe that's beautification, or maybe that's just simple infrastructure updates. We looked at opportunities for gateways to signify, hi, you're in downtown. We looked at some key intersections where we could be really strategic with branding, with improvements that are really kind of signifying really important places in downtown. Speaking of places, we also looked at opportunities for public green spaces. Those may be a much larger green space, multiple acres, where the community can come together in a big way. Or they may be the smaller spaces kind of in between, where you can kind of stumble upon it and be like, oh, that's a cool spot right between those buildings. And maybe there's spaces along the sidewalk where a cafe spills out and you have on-street cafe dining. So we looked for a lot of really interesting opportunities that way. Thinking about how to connect people back to downtown. You have a great institutional anchor just outside of downtown at the hospital. We learned that the staff, particularly the nurses, get out and walk every day in and around the hospital. How cool would it be if they walked downtown to shop or to grab a bite to eat, than spending dollars in your downtown? Looking at bicycle loops, opportunities for other beautification, a trend that we're seeing in the United States, but I'll say more specifically in your neighbor over in Conway. They're looking at ways to beautify alleys. And why are they doing that? Because people are using them as cut-throughs to get places. So why not make them beautiful, accessible? And then also our last thing is our focus areas. And we were asked to look at 3 of those. So from that kind of vision diagram, we put together what we're calling the master plan framework. Our 3 focus areas are the former high school location, which is signified with number 1. Number 2 is what I just mentioned, is the Iron Cross, Main, Meeting, and Railroad. And then number 3 is we were asked to look at the Hillcrest Center. We looked at this one in a couple different ways. We said, hey, do you want us to kind of work around the existing development, or do you want us to reimagine it completely? And we were directed by the steering committee, reimagine it completely. Let's see what happens. The darker brown boxes are indicating buildings that would be new infill development opportunities. The lighter brown, tannish yellow ones are buildings that we see as great opportunities to breathe new life into. So we're going to call those building improvements or adaptive reuse. So the largest one, right kind of in the center of downtown, is the brick warehouse. Not saying that it needs to change today or it should change anytime soon, but we saw it as a significant architectural building in your downtown, that it would be a shame for it to ever go away. So we wanted to say, this is a really cool building. Just make sure you guys hold on to that. It's neat. It gives you so much character to your downtown. The focus is on the first Catalyst site, which is the former high school site. We were asked to look at this one just because the current buildings that are there are in very poor condition. And this property lends itself to become something different than it once was. We looked at a lot of different things. There were a lot of different ideas around the space and a lot of desires to see a lot of things happen here. So our first priority really was to connect to downtown, and that's looking at Broad Street as a way to move people, because if you've ever walked it, it's not that far to the center of downtown. So if you're going to do something really wonderful at this site, there is that you need to have that great opportunity to connect the two. The second was looking at this site and positioning it for public use. Some of the ideas that came out of this was thinking about a large public space that could house a park, potentially house stormwater capture, potentially house a playground facility, amphitheater, additional parking. So when you all have large events like the Bog Off, you have a place for people to park and then walk to the event. Another thing that we were looking at in this area is an opportunity to introduce a new facility that may house a fire station, could house a community center, senior center, an event center. So if you position it correctly, you could potentially have all three, and that's what we have shown here. And additionally, just good common practice is when you create these big, beautiful, lovely spaces for the public, you want them to be 24-hour spaces in a sense. So eyes on the park is the idea here. So introducing residential that would be incorporated and look into the space so that it feels safe and inviting and comfortable at all times. So this was our first Catalyst site at the former high school. With all of our Catalyst sites, we are recommending you all look at some case studies. This one in particular is in Greer, South Carolina. Greer is a great model for how to develop a public space along with a public amenity. Their city hall actually sits on City Park. This was established in 2008. And the unique thing about this facility here is not only does it house a beautiful amphitheater and a beautiful fountain, but on the weekends, the town hall serves as an event venue, and the mayor's office is actually where brides get ready for their big day. So they found a way to really get multiple functions out of one space. So we have some more information in the document to talk about all the great things that Greer's been able to do. The second Catalyst opportunity that we're looking at is along the Iron Cross. Again, that is Main, Meeting, and Railroad. And we're really looking at opportunities to make Main Street your premier street. And really, I'm talking about the block between Broad and Railroad. Looking at ways to make sure that it's more functional for people and less functional for cars. And when I mean that, I'm not saying I'm taking cars away or recommending that at all. But what I'm saying is looking for opportunities where you can grow space for people so that you all can have outdoor dining, you can have maybe better street trees, you can have benches and those types of things. So that's one of the strategies that we were looking at. The other is improving intersections, more specifically for function, safety, and ADA compliance, but also beautification. We saw opportunity with the railroad. Today was the first time seeing the train. As many times as I've been here, I haven't seen it yet, so I was at Ritchie, people in there probably thought I was crazy, but I was like, oh, there's a train. So I wanted to see exactly how it functioned crossing the intersections. And we're looking at opportunities to take what that remnant land is adjacent to the parking spaces and creating a linear walking park. So you already have some sidewalk in place. What our recommendation is just adding to that so you have additional space to kind of create a walking loop along the railroad tracks. With that, we would also include landscaping, pedestrian lighting, furnishings, and a decorative fencing to dissuade people from crossing the railroad tracks except for at intersections. One thing that we really loved and we're just taking away with here in town is how you all have lit up Main Street. Your string lights are beautiful. I think it's very quintessential Loris. And we saw that it's a really great opportunity for you guys to carry that through in other locations like Railroad, Meeting, Main, further along Main, Walnut, and Duncan. The other idea in this area, we're calling places for people. And we have some key thoughts around where you could carve out some spaces for people, and kind of growing what you've already doing really well at your little pocket park where you have your forest mural and you do music there. You can have more spaces like that program in your downtown and provide a little Wi-Fi, and the next thing you know, you have people enjoying them when the weather's nice. Park once and walk. That's kind of a really big idea for this area. We're really wanting to encourage you all to think about how to promote walking in your downtown. Your downtown's not that large. So the idea is that you would encourage people to park once and walk to their destination versus moving their vehicles around multiple times, creating more congestion, more opportunities for pedestrian vehicle interactions, which are not great. But there are ways that with wayfinding, parking strategies, that we have provided additional information for. And then the other one, touched on a little bit, is reimagine old places, old spaces. So you have a couple of buildings in your town that are very iconic. In the sense, first building I think I remember in this town was, or the city, is the Pink Building. So I was like, that's an interesting building, huh? So there are opportunities and tax credits and ways to revitalize these properties, working with the property owners. So we call those out in some of our recommendations as well. One of the case studies that we are encouraging you to look into further, this is in Statesville, North Carolina. And what they have been able to do with their downtown Main Street is really, really remarkable. They've been at it for quite some time now, but investing in a robust landscaping program. They have signature furnishings. They've carved out spaces in the top left corners, you can see, for outdoor dining, which is really just brings a liveliness to the streetscape. And people want to be downtown. They want to interact in those spaces. And lastly, for the Catalyst projects, I wanted to share with you all the Hillcrest Center or the Hills Food Store. We were asked to look at this as kind of a wholesale redevelopment. So really we're looking at a robust streetscape along Broad Street, looking for ways to incorporate street trees so it's a more welcoming entrance to your downtown. But within the Hillcrest Center, we're looking at creating a central spine down the center of it, so a new street which would connect to the Railroad Avenue to the back of the property. And then introducing buildings in ways that they start to frame the streets so that you can walk in off the street and enter a building. And all the parking is kind of tucked in behind the building so you don't see it. This way it encourages more walking and it kind of grows your opportunity in downtown. So now downtown isn't just constricted to Main Street, but this kind of grows it in a way. While we looked at this area too, we looked at the area just north on this map, which we call the Maple Street District just because it's surrounded around the Maple Street. Not saying that should be its name or anything, but looked at different housing strategies. Driving through there a couple times, we recognized that there are a lot of vacant lots. So saw that there's opportunities to add to the housing stock that's already there. And there could be potential for different housing types. We're recommending looking at working with the community that is there and other community partners, potentially looking at opportunities for affordable housing so that we can maintain affordability as your downtown becomes more and more desirable. We want to make sure we're thinking about keeping people where they are. So that may include housing products like townhomes or duplexes or senior apartments for you all to consider in that area. And then also you'll see called out in the lighter yellow box in that area, number 16, supporting local haunts. I know there's a very beloved restaurant in that area. So we've looked at different ways to introduce different grants, matching grants, those types of things that the city could provide to support local businesses that are truly beloved in the community. So things like facade updates or other things to help them kind of maintain their prosperity in their location. This is a much grander scale than the Hillcrest Center, but I wanted to share this with you because it's one of the oldest ones. It began about 30 years ago, but this is in Mashpee, Massachusetts, as a case study. But this was a 1960s shopping center, strip-style shopping centers, all the shops and all the parking's in front. And what they've been able to do is reface the older shopping center and then add in new buildings. So then now it has this aesthetic of it's walkable, parking is along the streets or behind the buildings, and it's just a totally different experience than what was existing before this project started. So we wanted to show you an example that wasn't a complete overhaul. It still kept existing buildings. So all of these case studies have been linked within your documents. You can click on them and it'll take you to a webpage to share more information about it. Some of the other things that we looked at were opportunities to kind of improve infrastructure. One of our big ideas was Main Street, specifically the block between Broad and Railroad. And this is where we're recommending, we worked with the steering committee on this. We looked at a couple different ways. Maybe just leave parking on one side of the street so we can grow the sidewalks, or we take out parking just on this block altogether. And we were encouraged to look at it by taking all the parking out. And this actually grows us quite a bit of space for sidewalks. And what is great about that is now you have opportunities for restaurants to have outdoor dining. You have opportunities to have space to grow very mature trees. So you have that nice big tree aesthetic. So this was the only space that we removed parking wholesale. So I just want to say one block. I'm not recommending it all over town. And then this is just kind of a cross section of how that might work, where you still have your 2 travel lanes, you still have an edge condition, that matches the brick banding throughout town. You have, space for maturing street tree as well as about an 8-foot sidewalk, which is pretty considerable because right now you have somewhere between 4.5 to 6, depending on the conditions. And if someone puts a sandwich sign out, then it's all over. So we've made some very specific recommendations for this block and how to kind of make it more of your prized heart of downtown. The other location for streetscape improvements that we're recommending that you all move forward with is looking at Broad Street. Today, Broad Street, there's a lot going on. A little chaotic with some of the shorter blocks where people are trying to turn onto Broad Street and you don't have the staffing room to do so. So we're recommending taking a closer look at that, working with SCDOT. There is room within the right-of-way to add on-street parking, to add turn lanes, to add street trees, and to increase the space of sidewalks. So there is that room there. I'm not recommending doing this for the entirety of Broad Street, but I am wanting you all to think about maybe up to the Hillcrest Center as so that way you're growing your downtown and creating a very nice walkable rider place. So this is in section form how that could work. Still maintaining a 15-foot turn lane, 2 12-foot drive lanes, parallel parking, as well as what we're calling a multi-use path. So this is an oversized path. So someone on a bicycle can zip by while people are walking comfortably and you wouldn't have any interactions. One thing that we're introducing in this section too is what we're calling a building amenity zone. As you all are kind of taking that next step towards implementation, we're recommending that you look at your ordinance. So for new development, you might want to encourage new development in your downtown to include spaces for amenity zones so that you can get the outdoor dining adjacent to buildings or other uses. To support what's going on with that one block on Main, we're looking at Duncan Street and Walnut as one-way pairs. Today, Walnut is very, very tight. It has some parking that is front-end parking. It has some buildings that are going into the right-of-way. There's a lot of kind of nuances with Walnut. So we're looking at Duncan Street as an opportunity to, one, introduce more parking and formalizing that, and then creating a 20-foot travel lane, which would accommodate your emergency vehicles, and creating a more walkable street and destination street than you have today. You'll see that the building on the left, where it has a pocket park in front of it, that's one of those buildings that we think gives a lot of character to your downtown that could potentially one day post a mural, post a space out front of it, maybe a pop-up food truck park or something like that. But you guys have these opportunities to create these neat little pocket spaces within the community with spaces you already have existing. Just takes a little imagination. And then Walnut would be the pair to Duncan. And we looked at this in two different sections. Walnut was probably the most challenging for us to kind of approach, just given the variety of conditions that exist today. So one part of it highlighted there would have parallel parking. And the second part of it would have angled parking. So we move away from front end parking and turn it to angled so we can get the required lane. So you can see Ritchie's having outdoor dining and still maintaining the parking in front. And then lastly, looking at Meeting Street and Railroad Avenue. I do want to call out the center of this section here. This is where we're starting to think about how could we incorporate that linear path so that you have a neat kind of beautiful feature, kind of disguise the railroad track just a bit, beautify it, so introducing some buffers with landscaping, some decorative fencing, as well as sidewalks. And then thinking about these spaces outside of the road along the businesses. So you can see the brick warehouse there on the right. There is a bit of yard between the sidewalk and the building, so we see these opportunities for improvements that could be made down the road that could incorporate various activities. We're showing dining because it's kind of the easy thing to imagine, but just those improvements that really kind of enliven a street and provide value to the properties. I mentioned people spaces and places. This is the alley just over here off of Duncan in Maine. We're really envisioning an opportunity here to kind of think about the backs of those buildings as entrances and places too. Some of the facades are already really fabulous. Others may need a little touch up, but thinking about how those could be other people places that really are unique to your downtown. Providing a case study as well. This is Spartanburg, South Carolina. They took a very strategic approach to working with these alleys. So in the top left, you can see what before the alley looks like. And then, and also the streetscape to the top right. And then the after is the alley improvement. And then you can see in the bottom after actual new development that has been built on the alley. Who would have thought, right? So that's just one example of how an alley can kind of spur or be a catalyst for new development. And I wanted to leave you all with this just as you kind of start thinking about implementation and thinking about how you want to approach your ordinance. You already have a historic overlay in your downtown, but we're thinking through the potential for next steps for your downtown district. One thing that we would like you all to consider is looking into Main Street, South Carolina. It's an organization that supports downtowns through education, programming, policy. So we highly recommend you all kind of think about that. It's a great organization also just from the sense of working with other communities in South Carolina. So you have peers to look to who've already done it before, so you don't have to start from scratch. And then also thinking about a potential economic development ordinance that could incentivize future development, particularly for downtown. An example of an ordinance within a downtown that creates a funding source for local businesses. This is the town of Davidson in North Carolina. They have a matching grant program. So every year they award dollars to local businesses or property owners for the sole purpose of improving their properties within downtown. I have some examples here of businesses. On the far right is a facade improvement. The top left is an alley makeover that a local business now uses for their dining courtyard. And then the bottom is a historic restoration of a building. And I will leave you all with this. We have several spreads in the back of the document, but I will argue that this is probably the most important part of your document. If you're going to pay attention to anything tonight, it would be your implementation plan. So we have every single project that I mentioned tonight, as well as others, identified here. They're organized by category. Right now, we're just looking at the catalyst projects. So these are the projects that are going to spur all the other ones. These are really important. First being the Hillcrest Center development, the high school redevelopment, and the Iron Cross revitalization. I'm not saying that these are all projects that you have to get started with today, but they're ones that you all should be thinking about and starting to have conversations with property owners, thinking through how that may work from an economic development standpoint. So what we've done is outline who partners may be that you want to start speaking with. We've outlined some of the project horizon where we see that there's opportunity of when you need to get started. And then we have these aligned with your guiding principle, which ones we feel like really tie back to the communities that trust you. Where you see a little chat box with an exclamation point, that indicates a zoning recommendation. So we highly recommend you all go back into your zoning ordinance and making sure that there's not alignment, that you consider a revision, so that when it comes to implement these projects or opportunities, you guys are set up for success. You're not kind of battling with your own ordinance. And lastly, I do want to mention in communities where I've worked, where I've seen these plans materialize faster, is when there's a dedicated person who thinks about this day and night. We're calling it a downtown manager. You may call it what you want, but we're recommending that you all consider in the near future thinking about someone who can really champion this plan. And so we recommend working with your Merchants Association and your Chamber of Commerce to start those discussions. And the Main Street Association of South Carolina would be another great partner to consider if you'd like to carry that one further. So with that, I leave you, but I thank you so much for this opportunity to come and join you all in the community. It's been such a wonderful experience getting to know you all and think through some of your ideas together. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take those, as is Chris. Thank you.
Chris, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, as Lorna said, the most important part is the implementation. The last thing we want to do, and as later we built with the city, we're here to help as much as possible. But it's we can do a plan, and the plan is great, but we want to make sure that plan doesn't get put up on a shelf, that we have the strategies that we've identified and move this forward. And we like to push because we don't want to lose the energy. And we've seen some great things happen in other communities that, find these strategies, move forward with it, get the funding, and let's get going. So. Is there any questions, or do you want to kind of look at some of the plans that we put together? Do you have any other comments, questions?
You all have our contact info. We're happy to do a one-on-one as well.
One time it's like that too, is that I look back and look at different street state projects I've worked with over the years and economic development. But I was dealing with this more stocks, this more, later the exit 93. In 2001, there was not anything out there. There's nothing but farmland. You remember, we remember there was nothing but farmland. Most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire career. If you please get off exit 93, there's Lowe's Travel Center there, there's Quick Trips there, got Home Freight Towns, got Light Norton, you've got go around the corner, and the port there. That's a different story. This project here I've looked at, this gives me a point, a starting point, because there are a number of different grants available. There are a number of different partners that we can partner with, team up with. And I've seen other communities use, I've seen Aiken do it, I've seen Rock Hill do it, I've seen Greenwood do it. I've been in all these different communities. I've seen these other towns join in, and this is where you start. Like I said, even though it's a conceptual plan, I don't think everything will be done, because I mean, that's just the way it works. I mean, because I remember starting with a couple projects, and all of a sudden I was kind of going this way, and all of a sudden I think, okay, well, we need to redevelop this, let's use a conceptual plan. So, hey, these are ideas. Then you go back out, for a streetscape project, you may want to modify it, but you gotta have somewhere to start. So I think that, I think you've got some great opportunities here for us for a lot of improvements, and there are a number of different programs out there that are available that we can definitely go after. We've already seen 2 or 3 things to the state already. So as the state here down here at Bears, I met the state people the other day about some other projects and stuff like that too. So there are resources available. Once you get it going, I think generally it's like anything else. Once you get a few things going, and all of a sudden that makes things easier. So you can see, I mean, I look at the road in North Carolina, I lived in Lancaster for 5 years. And I used to go to the road in North Carolina, and I was going to take it back out and have downtown and down, and all of a sudden they get a brewery up there, and it just takes off. So some of the other communities around the state. So I think Morrison's in a great position. When I look at the development, you look at Highway 9 and the development's going on Highway 9, you look at the amount of cars that come to the beach is increasing, as we all know, every year. So we've got tremendous opportunities to tackle that. We've got some good neighbors to work with too around us in this county, and some of the other people around us working in hand with some of that too. So I think this is a good starting point. At least I think it's a good starting point for me. It gives me some ideas, and the city administrator gives me some ideas where I think we need to go, where I think we can partner with, who I think we can partner with to make these projects.
A lot of hard work's gone into this, and we appreciate what y'all have done. Looking forward to trying to get some of it implemented as soon as we can.
Well, we're here for you, so just let us know how we can help.
I will say one thing, Mr. Patches, I will say painstaking, but we've been through a bunch of those meetings, at least over the last couple of months, 2 or 3 months. So some of the projects. Some possibilities.
Great.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all, Clay, for you guys through this process.
Excited about the opportunity.
So Clay, real quick, and council, what's the next step? We presented the document to you. Is there a formal adoption of this, or?
Yeah, I think we're gonna look at, we'll probably modify it a little bit to the point you and I talked back around. I think there's some projects that we've got on the table now that I think will help. I call them kind of small projects so we can start working together. City Trooper is one of the players that's going to help us with that too. We talked to DOT as well. So I think we've got it, at least going in the right direction.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any public or press comments? I don't see anyone from the press here. Hearing none, those are all the items we have on our agenda tonight. I'll entertain a motion to each other.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Hardy, second by Councilwoman Johnson. Call for Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Patty.
Yes, sir.
Chair, I vote yes. Meeting adjourned at 6:50.